Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So my name is Regina Massey, and I'm a D&I enthusiast and a storyteller at Inclusify. I'll be your moderator for the day. So COVID-19 has definitely changed the kind of conversation and the topics of conversation we've been having. So for example, talking about the new normal has become the new normal. Apart from that, we've also seen multitudes of people losing their jobs. We've seen pay cuts, tremendous pay cuts, and we're all trying to cope up with this devastating news, and we're trying to build our economy back. The good news, however, is that our economy will not stay in this stagnant place. We will build it back. On the other side, for the past couple of years, we've been seriously talking about diversity and inclusion. So you would have seen many organizations build their own new strategies around diversity and inclusion. So right now is the best time, the most apt time to question yourself whether or not you should build a career in diversity and inclusion. Now, the term which I've used, build a career in diversity and inclusion, is obviously a very complicated thing I've said, because we are just trying to understand what is diversity, what is inclusion, let alone building a career. So today we have a veteran in her own field, Simi Chaudhary, with us. She's gonna help us understand whether or not you can build a career in diversity and inclusion. Should you build a career? Or what is the kind of certificate or what are the kind of skills you would require for such a profession? So Simi, welcome to our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Regina, and thank you, Inclusify, for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure.
So Simi has 16 years of experience. So she has built her expertise in not only human resources, also in CSR and also in diversity and inclusion. She's currently serving as the AVP of Sutherland. She's also worked in amazing huge brands such as Capgemini and Wipro. She's also really passionate about the environment, which makes me very, very happy. So,
I'm glad to hear that.
So Simi, I see that there are many definitions when we talk about diversity and inclusion, and often we club this term together. We often, in one breath, say D&I, right? So what is your definition? If you can help us understand, how do we define the term D&I?
Okay. So, Regina, first things first, I still feel I'm a learner in this field. You gave me the honor of introducing me as a veteran. Well, I'm trying to understand the dynamics, the changing dynamics of D&I every single day. There is now a pre-COVID, a post-COVID impact that you rightly spoke about. So, I want to use this platform, I want to use this opportunity to also hear people's questions, their comments, their insights into what they believe, D&I should be about. So, so again, making the disclaimer, I'm still a learner. All right, so diversity and inclusion, okay, and very interestingly, I actually posted a comment on somebody else's post today, and I've just been receiving a lot of traction on LinkedIn, and we were actually talking about what does diversity mean, what does inclusion mean, and there are some beautiful definitions out there. The most beautiful, and I'm sure most of you have heard of it, was by the famous, human rights activist, Miss Myers, who said that diversity is being, invited to a party, and inclusion is being asked to dance, right? There's one other definition which really resonated with me, which is diversity is the head count, and inclusion is making the heads count. The other thing that we are constantly hearing about is diversity important or is inclusion important? Or what comes first, Simi? Does diversity come first or does inclusion come first? So I think it's a quintessential chicken or egg story. What comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? So it's the same thing with diversity and inclusion as well. Diversity is basically, we're all living in a society filled up with diversity. We have people from different backgrounds, different qualifications, different gender expressions, different gender identities, different sexual preferences, race, religion, ethnicity. I mean, the world is filled up with diverse mix of people. That is diversity. So when you incorporate the same essence into your workplace, that is what you can call diversity in the workplace. All right. Now, this diversity will not work out. People will start feeling uncomfortable if you do not provide an atmosphere of equality, equity, and inclusion. So this is where inclusion comes into the picture, right? So in my belief, whenever I've been asked, does diversity come first or inclusion? My answer has been simple. What happens when you're inviting a guest over to your house? The first thing you do is you make everything comfortable, right? You make the bed comfortable, you make sure the washroom is clean, you make sure the linens are clean and everything's comfortable, and then you invite your guest to come over, right? The same thing. Before you bring in diversity, you want to focus on inclusion. Inclusion means making your policies inclusive, making your infrastructure accessible and inclusive, making the behaviors and attitudes of people inclusive, and that's when you want to really build diversity. So two sides of the same coin. And this is how, long way of, I'm sorry, I really took a longer approach to explaining D&I, but diversity essentially are the different cohorts of people that coexist, and inclusion is making the environment comfortable for them to coexist, innovate, and work well. That's what D&I is.
So thank you for helping us understand what is D&I. And I can see your love for the environment creeping into your answer. So I really like the way you explained in a very simple way. I know that you've also built your expertise in CSR, also in D&I. I'm pretty sure people would be asking you whether CSR and D&I are almost the same thing. Is that so?
Okay, so that's a great question. And look, both D&I and CSR fundamentally are about reaching out to the marginalized sections of the community, right? Both these functions emphasize on the requirement of organizations to behave, responsibly and ethically. So why do I say marginalized sections of the community? Is because these are people who have not had the right access to education, have not had the right access to various facilities that people from the privileged backgrounds have got. So from that standpoint, there's a lot of similarity between D&I and CSR. I mean, we all know what is CSR. It's the organization's efforts in giving back to the society, either through their own foundations, like you can have a Azim Premji Foundation, or working with other grassroots level organizations to spend the money that you have allocated for societal benefit, right? That is the main job of a CSR officer, right? Now, D&I is more, in my opinion, internal focused. It is the philosophy of building the right inclusive culture within an organization, and which is done through addressing certain processes in recruitment, how you retain people, the kind of policies you design for people, and including your civil infrastructure. Is your infrastructure ready to welcome a person with disability, right? Or do you have gender neutral washrooms? So that's where I talk about infrastructure, right? So CSR more about reaching out to the society, spending money, touching the lives of people. D&I on the other side is clearly to build a more inclusive, organization culture, and of course, being able to attract talent from different diverse pools, right? Now, I've always believed that these two functions, if they work hand in hand, can really achieve a lot. I'll give you an example. Today, if you look at India's gender ratio, right? What is the gender, male versus female? Can somebody quickly use the chat window and quickly comment? I don't want to put you on the spot, but take a guess as to what is the.
So we would really love everybody's participation right now. Feel free to give us your answers and then we'll go from there.
All right. I would say that we are pretty close to a 50-50 gender diversity, male versus female population in India as a country. I think it's 49:51, women is to men, which is almost 50-50, right? Now, look at the workplace, right? Do you see a 50-50% gender diversity? I don't think so. Organizations are struggling to make their gender diversity, which is their women representation, to 25%. Some are struggling to maintain it at 20%. I think the best that people have done so far is 35%. Of course, there are a few organizations like Unilever, for example, that recently spoke about achieving 50% women representation. So why do you think is this gap? So India has that many number of women. Then why are we not seeing that representation in the workplace? Is because historically women are also considered from the marginalized communities. They've not had access to education. They've not have had access to basic rights. Whenever, during these COVID times, I was speaking with one of my friends who's in the not-for-profit sector. And she said that poor farmers, poor laborers are now pulling out their children from school. But you know what, Simi, who gets to be pulled out first? It's the girl child who gets to be pulled out from school first. They still keep the boy child there. So why am I saying this? Is because in CSR, if you can focus on giving back to communities that focus on girl child education, for example, or if you're focusing on working towards upskilling the transgender community, right? These are marginalized sections. They do not have access to education. They do not have access to several other things that we from the privileged communities take for granted, right? So if CSR and D&I work hand in hand, I think an organization can really, really create a big impact. But again, both functions are different. Both need slightly different skill sets, slightly different understanding of the topic. But like I said, that fundamentally, both, of course, have to do with how a business operates in the right fashion.
Right. So you mentioned about gender neutral washrooms. Now that would be very important for the trans community. Is it possible for Indian organizations to actually have that sort of infrastructure available to the community?
Why not? Why not? So in my organization in Sutherland, what we've done is that we've had washrooms for men, we've had washrooms for women, and we've had washrooms for persons with disabilities, right? So what we did was we converted all the washrooms to the washrooms meant for persons with disabilities to gender inclusive washrooms, right? Now, I want to, of course, use this opportunity to tell my friends who joined over this, call today that making inclusive policies, making inclusive infrastructure does not only help people from that specific marginalized community, but it helps everybody. So let me give you an example. You create an inclusive washroom where a man, a woman, a transgender person, a person with disability can go in. But think about, Regina, a time where you've had your office party, right? And you've had a male employee who brought his daughter along, right? Small daughter along, right? And this daughter today says, Dad, I need to use the washroom. Now imagine the conundrum in the mind of the father. Do I take her to the men's washroom? Do I take her to the women's washroom? Because I'm a man and she's a daughter of mine, small kid can't go alone, right? Then what do you have to do? You have to wait for your female colleague to turn up. Hey, female colleague, please take my daughter. And your daughter is, squirming like, oh, why should I go to the washroom with somebody who I don't know? So when you have a gender inclusive washroom, right, it's easy for the male colleague to take his daughter and enter the washroom. So this is the beauty of inclusion. When you create a work from home policy, it just doesn't benefit women, it benefits men also. Right? So that's the beauty of inclusion. Look at Indigo when they first came up with the ramps, right? I mean, I love Indigo because you don't have to climb up the stairs. You can just, when you create an inclusive ramp, you're not only helping somebody with a bag, which is very easy to drag up, you're also helping a wheelchair user. And, so that's the beauty of inclusion. You create inclusion and it helps everybody, not just, different segments of people. So yeah, I hope I answered your question though.
Absolutely. So I think simple innovation can really help your employees and can reach inclusion in whatever capacity you can. Simple, small little changes can really help everybody around. So can we understand how you ended up being a D&I professional? What was your journey like? What prompted you to actually build your career in D&I?
Okay, so thank you for asking me this, and it brings back very, very fond memories. 12 years ago, 2008, we had so I was with Wipro at that point in time, and we all HR folks, we just received the goal sheet of our bosses. Okay, so it's the time of the year when we need to set our goals for the year, right? And we all received the same goal sheet of our boss, and our boss said, look at my goal sheet and build your goal sheet according to that. And that's where in one part at the end is where I saw that the management had asked him to lead the Persons with Disabilities program. He was at that point in time the general manager of HR. And I told Isaac, I don't know if I'm qualified or not, but something tells me that I want to do this. And after a couple of rounds of interviews, I was allowed to program manage this along with him. So I supported him in starting this journey. It is like, I don't know, Richard Branson, who said that, you learn more when you just kind of jump into the ocean, because you'll figure out how to swim. So I did a lot of reading, I did a lot of research, I spoke to a lot of people. LinkedIn those days was also not all that, great in networking. So I had to Google, figure out who can mentor me so that I can do a good job in this project that I voluntarily raised my hand for. And that's at that point in time, I was able to reach out to this gentleman called Arman, who was heading the Persons with Disabilities program in Infosys. And when I asked Arman, listen, we both are competitors, right? Infosys and Wipro. But do you think you can help me with this? And he said, come to Infosys. I will host you here. I will tell you what are the various things we've done for persons with disabilities. And as you all know, Infosys is one of those great organizations that has done a lot for persons with disabilities. And I started my journey that way, learning from others, reading up whatever content was available on the internet, following my gut, my passion. And eventually we were able to also hire a consultant who was a subject matter expert in disability. So 3 full years of D&I. Mind you, I was continuing to discharge my responsibility in HR. So D&I was not my full role at that point in time. I was a new mother. And I clearly had to put in 150% of my commitment to make sure I did a good job in HR and D&I. So from there, it started. Then I joined Bosch after Wipro. And in Bosch, of course, a conversation on D&I led me to join CSR, right? And I was heading CSR for Bosch for 2 years for India and Vietnam. And after that, I moved to Capgemini, where again, working on a lot of diversity projects, especially for building capabilities in women leadership. And now in Sutherland, I continue my work in HR as well as D&I, and more to do with gender, persons with disabilities, veterans, and the LGBTQ community. So that's been, my 16 years of 12 years of working in D&I.
All right. So I'm so glad that you had your own inclination towards D&I. And today we can have this conversation because of that inclination. You would have gone through a lot of experience, people would have been very accepting of certain strategies you would have put forward, or you would have gone through certain situations which were more challenging than you anticipated. So can you take us through one or two instances of yours?
There are many, many instances, and right now it's a lot of fogginess in my brain because, when too many instances come into your mind. So, but it's never been easy, Regina.
Yeah.
You need a lot of business support to drive D&I. And to all my friends who joined today's call, I think the biggest thing that will hold you in good stead is to be intentional, it's to be deliberate, and it's to have a lot of conviction, right? So you are going to hear a lot of excuses when you're in D&I. So the first excuse is, I don't have time, it looks hard. In fact, some people, some business leaders don't even want to use the word gay and lesbian, right? So, and here you are trying to tell them about creating a workplace, about hiring from the LGBTQ community. There are people who don't even know how to, for example, there was this leader who used to keep saying differently abled. It took me close to 6 months to tell him that that's not the right, nomenclature. And then, so your own understanding of a topic helps you in convincing people, right? So my understanding, the fact that the United Nations Conventions for Rights for Persons with Disability states that this is the best way to call a person, which is person with disability, person with speech impairments, person with visual impairment, and not call them blind, deaf, dumb, and that's not the preferred nomenclatures. So, reading up a lot, getting yourself familiarized, building your own conviction, and then being deliberate. What does that mean? That you may need to knock on the same doors, not once, not twice, not thrice, but several times with the right business case when you're working in the field of D&I. If you want to be a better HR, if you want to be a good D&I person, then I think it's very, very important that you learn as much as you can about the various nuances of diversity and use that with conviction and be deliberate and try to get past those excuses that business or whoever is going to come and put forward.
Right. I think that's the biggest challenge. One being that you have to learn about each community, have to learn what is the right way to address them, first of all, and try to build simple strategies which your organization can.
So Regina, I am sorry to cut you here, but what I wanted to mention here is that don't beat yourself up, and I don't want to also give the impression that if you want to get into D&I, you have to really wear your glasses and start Googling and all. No, you have to be well informed, right? But you're allowed to make mistakes. When you make a mistake, I think the first thing you need to do is to quickly correct it. For example, I think just about 6 months ago, somebody corrected me saying, you can't call a person transgender. So I said, huh? why can't I call the person trans? You are supposed to call the person as trans man, trans woman, or transgender person. If you don't call, if you don't suffix the word person, then and just use the word transgender in itself, it is demeaning, it is disrespectful. So, like I said, just 6 months ago, somebody corrected me. And now I make sure that I'm very, very deliberate in the way I address people. So, what I did is I immediately came back, I Googled a little more, increased my understanding about this. And so it's okay. People are those who want to get into this field or are already doing it. You will stumble, but just pick yourself up quickly and learn a little more and move on and don't repeat, these small mistakes which could become insensitive mistakes.
So an interesting thing is that when I was preparing for this talk, I saw your LinkedIn profile and I saw that you've mentioned your pronouns over there. So can I ask, what is the reason for you especially mentioning your pronouns?
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you noticed this. In fact, just about a month ago, the vice president of a very large IT company sent me a message on LinkedIn wanting to know what does the pronoun mean. And I don't know this gentleman except for the fact that we both are connected on LinkedIn, but I thought his curiosity was really, really well placed. And see, what I told him and what I'm going to tell you is that society has taught us to make automatic assumptions about gender and about what pronouns to use for someone. And typically it is a male or a female, right? In fact, even today we don't provide the option of transgender when we are asking people about their gender. It's mostly male, female. There's so many forms, I don't even see male, female, others, or male, female, transgender even mentioned. Anyway, so see, if a person's gender expression does not match a person's gender identity. So what does gender expression mean? It means that so we'll start with gender identity. It basically means the way a person identifies internally, right? Do I feel like a girl? Do I feel like a boy? Do I feel both like a girl or a boy? Do I not feel anything? Friends, I want to tell you that if you look at if you Google gender identities in Google, there are more than 50 types, 50 types of gender identities that are prevalent today. Australia has recognized, I don't know, 33 or 36. United Nations has recognized, I think, 26 or so. Pardon me if I'm wrong, but ballpark. So all these days, we've had a very binary form of looking at gender, which is male, female. Then came transgender. But if you see, LGBTQ plus is the terminology that people use. What is that plus? That plus is, covers the wide array of gender identities, right? 33, 36, doesn't matter. So, again, the reason why I have put pronouns is that I may look like a woman, I may dress like a woman, my name can be very feminine, but deep inside I may feel like a man, right? And there are people like this. So I want to make it easy for people, especially people who haven't seen me, to let them know that I'm a woman and you can address me as she, her, hers. You can use these pronouns for me. And like I said, that look at this Indian name, for example, Kiran. Many a times, if you have not met this Kiran, you may have that guesswork to do, right? Is this a man? Is this a woman? Because Kiran could be a feminine name, could be a masculine name as well. So when you put your pronouns proactively, when you're identifying or introducing yourself, you are simply eliminating the guesswork that other people are having to do in their minds. And you're also showing sensitivity to the fact that you're aware of the difference between gender identity and gender expression. Remember, gender expression is basically how you come across to people in terms of your appearance, how you look. Gender identity could be different, which is how you really feel within yourself. So sorry for giving you long answers to all your questions, but I
No,
really hope.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful that you, tell us different stories. So I can see that your job is tough for sure, but it's also a very interesting job and a very intriguing job in which you have to constantly keep on learning. So you're always on your tiptoes, trying to learn and upgrade yourself. So that's wonderful. I am going to ask you a very cliche question, so bear with me. The question is, do I need to be an HR professional to, get into, to become a D&I professional?
No, plain and simple. Uh, yes, if you were to do some statistical dipstick, you would see that most D&I people are either from the HR background or have some form of HR qualification. Yes, that's true, but I've met several people who are excellent D&I leaders, come with phenomenal amount of knowledge and accomplishments in the area of D&I, but who have had no connection with HR whatsoever. Interestingly, I'm seeing one of my colleagues from Sutherland who's joined, and his name is Sudarshan. So Sudarshan joined from the service delivery into my team to support me in diversity and inclusion. And I, at that point, never looked at his qualification or whether he knows HR. I just checked his passion. I checked some basic understanding, and I checked some basic, creative thinking, and onboarded him into my D&I function. So one of my very good friends, Ritesh, he was I think the APAC D&I head for IBM. I mean, he came from a coding background, right? One of my other friends works in a very large retailer organization. He was in the customer management area, and then he moved to D&I. So you can have people move in. I think it's the passion that really counts. Passion and a little bit of action. So just passion in itself is not enough. Some of your actions, some of your verbal, how do I say, your voice and your action should give the confidence to the organization that you might be a good fit in D&I. So it's not the qualification.
So that opens up the stage. So that opens up the stage to almost everybody who's interested in making a career.
Absolutely.
So that's quite interesting. Even I think a lot of us would have had this, this notion in our mind that we need to be from an HR background. Even if we had an inclination towards D&I, we would not have automatically connected or thought that we could have gone into that, right? This leads us to the next question. What are the kind of skills one would look for in this job? Like, for example, if I have to assess myself, what are the kind of skills I need to keep in mind or enhance to get into this field?
All right. So assess. Okay. So good. Thanks for pulling up the next slide. And friends, I must tell you that these are skills that you need to perform any role well. Any D&I, HR, finance, admin, coding. I mean, any tech role. These are skills that you will need. I have put together these skills very specifically because these are skills which I believe have helped me immensely. Collaboration. So, like it or not, a cubicalized approach will not help. So if you're one of those who likes to work in their cubicle mindset, will not work. You will need to collaborate a lot. If you're a D&I officer, you will have to work with the recruitment team. You will have to work with the admin team. will have to work with HR, you will have to collaborate with business, you will have to work with the complement team. I mean, you know, you will have to collaborate with external consultants. You will have, so collaboration is the key. So whether you, from a personality standpoint, whether you're introverted, extroverted, does not matter. You will have to put yourself out there. And like I said, sometimes knocking on the same door more than once, twice, thrice. So collaboration is definitely the key skill that you need. Influencing. So influencing is another very, very important skill, because like I said, the people have their excuses. Remember, diversity and inclusion does not come naturally to people. Why does it not come naturally? Because from our childhood, we have been raised by our parents, by our grandparents, by everybody saying that birds of the same feather flock together, right? We have been constantly said that you're a bright child, mingle only with the bright students. You've been told you're from a certain religion, be only with those folks who are from the same religion as yours, because we've always found strength in being in homogeneous groups, right? So our DNA does not allow us to be appreciative of diversity and inclusion immediately, right? Remember this. We human beings, we like people who like us or who are like us. Do you understand? It's a very powerful statement. It means that, you know, if I am a man, my tendency is to constantly go and hire men. I wouldn't want to hire women because I have so many unconscious biases, right? If I'm a person without disability, I'm going to not be comfortable hiring a person with disability because I think the person will take more, sick leaves and be away or need more support. So, there's no research that has said that, women can't perform as well as men. There's no research. In fact, WHO has said that, the assumption that people with disabilities take more time off work is actually untrue, right? So what happens is that people you are interacting with as a D&I person, you need to convince them. And for that, you need influencing skills. Creative thinking, again, won't spend too much time, but like I said, that you will find creative excuses from business leaders on why not to hire from here, why not to hire this, community of people. And therefore, you need to don the creative hat of yours. You will need to do a little out of box thinking to create the right business justification and convince people who you're working with. Researching and reading, I think I've spoken a lot about this. And, incidentally, I mean, I'm reading this book, right? And I thought I'm just going to show this to you. This book is called Blink, and it's written by Malcolm Gladwell. What a beautiful book on unconscious biases. It's all about snap judgments, right? How humans look at something and make a snap judgment. And so my point here is that, engage more in researching. If you're working on persons with disabilities topic, for example, I think you need to be familiar with the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016. Right? So when you're aware of such acts and legislative, work out there, I think you will be in a better spot to convince business that this is important to do. Otherwise, we'll be in a problem, right? Just reading up about Section 377, familiarizing yourself with, the rights of the transgender people bill. I think these are very, very important because you can use these as your means of creating the right, awareness levels in your organization about why diversity is not just good to have, but, you should have it. Emotional intelligence. This is a topic for a different day altogether, but emotional intelligence means understanding your own emotions, understanding the emotion of the other person, and adjusting your communication and interaction so that you have a win-win situation. In simple language, that's how emotional intelligence is defined. So when, as a D&I person, you go out and start talking to business leaders, talking to recruitment, talking to comp and ben, hey, bring in this policy, hey, change your recruitment policy. I mean, there are times where you can feel flustered, you may feel agitated, you may feel angry, because you know that this is the good thing to do and somehow the other person is not able to see your point of view. So I think high levels of emotional intelligence will really help you stay the course, because you need to really put yourselves in the other person's shoes to even understand why that person has that kind of concern in hiring a diverse candidate, or uh, adopting any of your ideas on D&I. So high levels of emotional intelligence is very important.
So these are only few words which have been mentioned on the slide, but each word carries a big weightage. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so for example, emotional intelligence is one of the key terms here, and like Simi pointed out, it would help you throughout your life, not just this. So some of the skills we might already have, some of the skills you might be interested in enhancing, but there is a way to do that, and definitely research is one. The other is learning on the job. These are also skills which can be found in various professionals, not just HR professionals. So again, a big encouragement to everybody who's listening in, that yes, you can also become a very good D&I professional, right? Which brings us to our next question. How do we start? How does an individual start?
Okay, so I think those of you friends who joined this call and are from the HR background, so I think you guys have okay, I shouldn't use the word guys again, because guys is not an inclusive term. So I think you all have a better advantage of dipping your foot into the D&I waters, if I may. But I think, see, when I tell my boss, during my Wipro times, that I think I was just lucky, right? I saw the role open, I raised my hand, and you brought me onto your team, and I've been doing D&I. I think I was lucky. I still feel actually I'm lucky. But he keeps reminding me that no, the same goal sheet of mine went to 25 team members. You're the only one who stood up and said, I want to support you, Isaac, in this. Right? So I think, Regina, following your passion, speaking up, and letting others around you know that you are keen to support in D&I, I think the best place to start, if you are not already a D&I professional, is within your own organization. I think this is the best place where you can start working on D&I. You don't need to be formally designated as the D&I, officer or D&I leader, but you can join various employees. Remember, large organizations, or most organizations have employee resource groups. These are groups formed by people, like you have the LGBTQ employee research group, you employee resource group, you have the women networking group, you have a group for persons with disabilities. So join one of those groups, understand people's point of view, start working on initiatives, get noticed. The first point that you see on the screen is being the change. Remember, change begins first with your own self. Ask yourself, how inclusive are you yourself, right? My biggest joy was when I was able to make a change in my father's mind, right? My father, he worked in the United Nations, traveled the world, and somewhere I did see a little bit of hesitation in his mind whenever we spoke about the LGBTQ community. Today, the amount of outreach work that my dad does, especially for the transgender community, I am so proud that I made that change within my house first, right? Secondly, within yourself, like I said, And I was telling Regina a few days ago when we spoke that, remember, we also have a lot of unconscious biases. We ourselves are not as inclusive as we want to show others. So start taking those small steps, start speaking up for others. Now, if you see somebody who's not able to, communicate their ideas, start doing that. Reach out to HR if you feel that a policy needs to change, for example. I mean, policies are hosted on your company intranet, right? So start wearing the lens of an inclusion person. That is this policy good for just one community, or is it good for everybody at large? Make your voice heard. I know several people who've built D&I careers by being in by just reaching out to HR, saying, hey, HR, I can't see this in your policy. Hey, HR, I can't see a training on this topic. And eventually, they started working closely with HR and eventually took up the D&I responsibility. I have a very close friend, whose name comes to my mind. Being intentional. I told you about this. Being deliberate, being intentional, recognize your own blind spots, standing up. We spoke about it, and spreading awareness. So if you have some skills like good facilitation skills, like you're confident of taking a 1 hour training program, then raise your hand, tell HR, tell your organization, I would like to take a session on inclusion and diversity, or I would like to take a session on unconscious biases, or I would like to take a session on a particular D&I topic. And keep spreading awareness, because visibility is the key. So if you're visible, you stand a big chance of getting into that field. And there are a lot of organizations, including Inclusify. I mean, we didn't have so many organizations 10 years ago when I began my journey. But I think reaching out to such organizations, finding yourself a mentor, finding a mentor through LinkedIn who can guide you in how you can make a transition. You'll have to keep looking out for the right roles in the job portals. It might be difficult for people to hire you without no past background. That's why I say that wherever you are, if you can start making some small changes, you can be proudly saying that you've had some experience in D&I.
Right. So a very interesting session we've had today. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And I, for one, really enjoy talking with you and learning about your life, how you've implemented change in yourself and in others around you, how you face challenges almost on a daily basis. I mean, that's quite interesting. But I, for one, am absolutely intrigued. And I hope I become a good D&I professional, and I hope we have intrigued everybody who's listening today to take on these small little practices. We have a couple of questions which people have been asking.
Sure.
So we'll take up a few. We won't be able to take up all of them as we have a crunch in the time. So the first question is there any specific certification which you would recommend to become a D&I expert?
Listen, again, it's all about educating yourself. It's all about knowing some of the acts and bills and stuff like that. So I've never attended or acquired a certification in D&I, but there are a lot of organizations that are that certify people in D&I. One such organization is Interweave, right? So if you're interested, go to their website. It's INTERWEAVE. So I know about Interweave having D&I certifications. I don't know what exactly it's called. One of my friends who's a very senior D&I professional in a very large organization, she did a course in human rights law, right? Because again, D&I is deeply connected with human rights, and you may want to look at a law degree also if you want to. So So yeah, I mean, I'm not very aware of what the degree or the qualification is called, but I could just give you these two references. You can take a look.
All right. So the next question is, what would be the career progression of somebody planning a career in D&I?
Okay, interesting. So I would say, and I'm using the word HR because that's where my skills and my experience comes from, right? I've been in HR all throughout my 16 years. So just like the way, you see an HR growing in an organization, where at one point you don't have any team members at all and you're responsible for a small group of business, you're catering to their HR needs, and then moving to a slightly bigger unit, having more team members. So the DNI is also somewhere like that, where you start off by becoming a DNI officer, and then you start managing a bigger portfolio. See, DNI in organizations today are various pillars, right? So in Sutherland we have a women pillar, we have an LGBTQ pillar, we have a persons with disabilities pillar, we have a veteran pillar, right? So you may start off by becoming the DNI officer of one such pillar, right? And as you grow up, you take on more. So then you take on more pillars, or you take on more geographies. For example, Sutherland today is present in so many countries, right? So I might say, I have had sufficient exposure in India. Can I also take up the DNI responsibilities of Philippines or the Americas? So that's also another good way of you moving up the ranks, with taking more and more, complexities in your role, and increasing the span of your coverage.
All right. So, although we have covered this question, but I'm going to still read it out. Somebody is asking that, can a person move from a technical role to a D&I team? Is there any experience needed to work with D&I?
No, like I said, that we all have to make a start. I mean, listen, I'm an MBA in marketing. I'm not even an MBA in HR. So I made a start somewhere in HR. So you have to make that start. I started by first becoming a recruiter, and then I got into HR, right? So like I mentioned earlier, there is no qualification, no background as such. I mean, being in HR just provides you that additional advantage, because recruitment, how complement works, how business works. So that kind of gives you an edge for sure. But you can come in from any background whatsoever.
Right.
And just make that first start, speak with HR, speak with your colleagues, create an intervention, drive an initiative. I mean, whole of June month was the Pride month, where we celebrate the voice of the LGBTQ community. I mean, just creating a few events around around a month kind of gives you the visibility. And somebody in HR may say, hey, I loved the way you worked on this particular topic. Would you like to join hands? And then you start from there.
Yeah. All right. So the last question for the evening, and before we answer this question, I would like to apologize to everybody else who has asked the question and we're not able to answer because of the shortage in time. But we'll try to answer as many as possible, even after the session. So do follow us on our Instagram handle, on our LinkedIn page, and keep yourself updated, because we're going to come up with more interesting speakers. We're going to come up with interesting topics. Also, to keep it lively and fresh every time, we would be very happy to take your suggestions for topics or even for speakers. So do engage with us on our social media channels. So the last question for today is, how can an organization measure the success of its D&I initiatives? A big one. Yeah.
And the toughest one. And I think this is where we get stuck as D&I people, when business says, what's the return on investment if I hire, women or hire persons with disabilities? I like I said, that the first thing you need to tell businesses that you are reducing your talent pool if you are not hiring from everywhere, right? So see, the ROI is very, very tough. Okay, I think organizations are still struggling with measuring this, but I feel one way to check this is, we all run these employee engagement surveys, employee, pulse surveys and all of that. A simple question: where do you feel included in this organization? Do you feel a sense of belongingness, right? And if most of your respondents are saying yes, then you can go back to business saying that, this is one way of indication that we are doing a good job in inclusion. I mean, there are a lot of examples of where companies have perished because they have not had a diverse mix of employees. Diversity leads to innovation. If you hire two women or two men versus one woman, one man, one Indian, one American, I mean, the ways that they will address the same problem would be different. And you would just have so much more innovation, so much more ideation than hiring people from a homogeneous group. So I think the business case is this: how do you measure your ROI? You can look at things like attrition. You can look at, your employee engagement scores. 2 years ago, your diversity was this. Now your diversity is this. So how are you, correlating your employee engagement scores with the pre-focus and the post-focus creative thinking in terms of how you can present a return on investment? But as such, I think I think attrition is one very important parameter you can show. I've seen, teams that have more diversity have lesser attrition and have better employee engagement scores.
All right. So once again, thank you so much. You have definitely demystified certain assumptions which a lot of us had. So thank you so much for giving us your time, sharing your knowledge, sharing your wonderful stories with us. You have, and I speak for all when I say you have definitely encouraged everybody who was listening today.
No, thank you very much, Regina. And I'm taking a look at all the questions that have come in. Some are really, really good questions. My request is please connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat with you because, these questions need answering. So please reach out, and I'm going to be very happy connecting with you offline. Thank you very much, Regina, and thank you, Inclusify, and thank you, friends, for being here.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a very beautiful evening. And do stay tuned and check out our website because we have covered amazing life stories of people from diversity. So we have amazing videos, amazing articles written. Do check them out. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you.